Respiratory diseases are increasing rapidly and drastically. The reason behind is mainly change breathing pattern along with environmental pollution. As yoga teachers, whether it is asana, pranayama, or meditation, breathing plays a very important role. In fact, if you remove breath from yoga, it can be termed as a mere physical exercise. Friends, breathing is one physical function that can be done with awareness and without awareness. And this plays a major role in yoga. Whether you are conscious or not, breath still functions. Breathing is the essence of yoga and one of the main reasons the practice is so vital. Yoga consciously connects the mind and body through attention of breath work. So, as yoga teachers, whether you teach asana, pranayam, meditation, or even shat kriyas, we need to know the respiratory system so that Jalaneti, Sutraneti, or Vaman kriyas can be understood very well. Now, how does these practice affect your respiratory system? Now, for all the above to understand, we need to know the respiratory system. Let's talk about the overview. What is the respiratory system? Now, the respiratory system is the network of organs and tissues that help you breathe. It includes your airways, lungs, and blood vessels. The muscles that power your lungs are also part of the respiratory system. These parts work together to move oxygen throughout the body and clean out waste gases and carbon dioxide. Now let us talk about the function. What does the respiratory system do? The respiratory system has many functions. Besides helping you to inhale and exhale, that is a breathe in and breathe out, it allows you to talk and to smell, warms air to match your body temperature, and moisturizes it to the humidity level of your body needs, deliver oxygen to the cells in your body, removes waste gases including carbon dioxide from the body when you exhale. It protects your airways from harmful substances and irritants. Anatomy. What are the parts of the respiratory system? The respiratory system has many different parts that work together to help you breathe. Each group of parts has many separate components. Your airways deliver air to your lungs. That includes the first one is your nose. Nose. When you inhale, air goes through your nostrils. The air enters the nasal passage and travels into your nasal cavity. Your nose is also a two-way street. When you exhale, the old air from your lungs is removed out. The nose is the main way for the air to leave your body, but your nose is more than a passageway for air. The nose also warms, moistens, and filters the air before it goes to the lungs. The inside of your nose is lined with a moist, thin layer of tissue called the mucous membrane. This membrane warms up the air and moistens it. The mucous membrane makes mucus, that sticky stuff in your nose, you might call snot. Mucus captures dust, germs, and other small particles that could irritate your lungs. If you look inside your nose, you will also see hairs that can trap large particles, like dirt or pollen. If something does get trapped in there, you can probably guess what happens next. You sneeze. Sneezes can send those unwelcome particles speeding out of your nose at 100 miles per hour. Further back in your nose are even small hairs called cilia that you can see only with a microscope. The cilia move back and forth to move the mucus out of the sinuses and back of the nose. Cilia can also be found lining the air passages, where they help move mucus out of the lungs. The nose allows you to make sense of what's going on in the world around you. Just as your eyes give you information by seeing and your ears help you out by hearing, the nose lets you figure out what's happening by smelling. It does this with help from many parts hidden deep inside your nasal cavity and head. Up on the roof of the nasal cavity is the olfactory epithelium. Now, olfactory is a fancy word that has to do with smelling. The olfactory epithelium contains special receptors that are sensitive to odor molecules that travel through the air. These receptors are very small. There are about 10 millions of them in your nose. There are hundreds of different odor receptors, each with the ability to sense certain odor molecules. Research has shown that an odor can stimulate several different kinds of receptors. The brain interprets the combination of receptors to recognize any one of about 10,000 different smells. How signal gets sent? When the smell receptors are stimulated, signals travel along the olfactory nerve to the olfactory bulb. The olfactory bulb is underneath the front of your brain, just above the nasal cavity. Signals are sent from the olfactory bulb to the other parts of the brain to be interpreted as a smell you may recognize, like apple pie fresh from the oven. Identifying smell is your brain ways of telling you about your environment. Have you ever smelled your toast burning? In an instant, your brain interpreted the smell and a problem, and you knew to check on your toast. You learned to associate a certain smell with burning, and now your brain remembers that smell, so you recognize it. Your sense of smell also can help you keep safe. For example, it can warn you not to eat something that smells rotten, or help you detect smoke before you see a fire. Most people just think of the tongue when they think about taste, but you couldn't taste anything without some help from your nose. The ability to smell and taste go together because odors from food allow us to taste more fully. Take a bite of food and think about its taste. Then pinch your nose and take another bite. Notice the difference. It's just another reason to appreciate your knockout of a nose. Sinuses. The sinuses are small air pockets located behind your forehead, nose, cheekbones, and in between your eyes. The sinuses produce mucus, which is a thin and flowing liquid that protects the body by trapping and moving germs away. Sometimes bacteria or allergens can cause too much mucus to form, which blocks the openings of your sinuses. Excess mucus is common if we have a cold or allergies. This mucus buildup can become thick and encourage bacteria and other germs to build up in your sinus cavity, leading to a bacterial or viral infection. Most sinus infections are viral and go away in a week or two without treatment. If your symptoms don't improve within 1 or 2 weeks, you may have a bacterial infection and should schedule an appointment with your doctor. Now, after the sinus, let's talk about the pharynx. The pharynx is commonly called the throat. It is a passageway that extends from the base of your skull to the level of the sixth cervical vertebrae. It serves both the respiratory and the digestive system by receiving air from the nasal cavity and food and water from the oral cavity. When bacteria or viruses get into your throat, they can cause an infection that makes your pharynx swollen, tender, and red. This is called as pharyngitis, or in simple terms, sore throat. Let's talk about the larynx. Larynx are also known as voice box. So the larynx, commonly called the voice box, is an organ in the top of the neck involved in breathing, producing sounds, and protecting the trachea against food aspirations. The larynx houses the vocal cords and manipulates pitch and volume, which is essential for phonation. It is situated just below where the tract of the pharynx splits into the trachea and the esophagus. The larynx is found in the anterior neck at the level of cervical vertebrae C3 to C6. It connects the inferior part of the pharynx with the trachea. And now let's talk about the epiglottis. The epiglottis is a leaf-shaped flap in the throat that prevents food from entering the windpipe and the lungs. It stays open during breathing, allowing air into the larynx. During swallowing, it closes to prevent aspirations of food into the lungs, forcing the swallowed liquid of food to go along the esophagus towards the stomach instead. It is thus the valve that diverts passage to either the trachea or the esophagus. The epiglottis is made up of elastic cartilage covered with mucous membrane attached to the entrance of the larynx. It protects upwards and backwards behind the tongue and the hyoid bone. Now, let us talk about the trachea. The trachea is commonly known as your windpipe. It is a tube about 4 inches long and less than an inch in a diameter in most people. The trachea begins just under the larynx, that is your voice box, and runs down behind the breastbone, that is your sternum. The trachea then divides into 2 smaller tubes called the bronchi, one bronchus for each lung. The trachea is composed of about 20 rings of tough cartilage. The back part of each ring is made up of muscle and connective tissue. Moist, smooth tissue called mucosa lines the inside of the trachea. The trachea widens and lengthens slightly with each breath in, returning to its resting size, and each breath out. So friends, up till now, hope you have understood the first part of the respiratory system. Take a break and try to absorb whatever that I have been discussing in part 1 of the respiratory system. In the next part 2, we will discuss about the other parts of the respiratory system, that is the bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, capillaries, etc. See you soon. Take care. Keep smiling. Namaste.